give or take. In Denver, 3,000 streets. So the question is, I mean, how do you decide? It's a hairy, complex, and frankly important decision. And these are the kinds of decisions that you see on a regular basis, and even more so, you know, in this weird era in which we live. So we're going to talk to you about how we approach this particular problem, but this is really applicable to a larger set of problems or to, you know, different business problems. And that's the idea is, you know, breaking down decisions, breaking down difficult, complex problems into their underlying drivers. Right? You look at the problem as a whole, and it's just, again, 7,000 restaurants, 3,000 streets. It's just too complex in itself. But you break it apart, you can make individual decisions, assign individual values to sort of individual aspects of that problem, and then using data science, you know, using, you know, computational power, you coalesce that information, and you're able to make big decisions based on all those little decisions. And we'll get into exactly how we did that. So let me pass it over to Meghan, who'll talk more about our approach.
Yes, thank you, Brian. So being in the consulting industry, we have this framework that ties back to data science that you can take across really any industry and different clients, but we found that the same framework applied to this social or economic challenge as well. So we used the same approach, but really the first step and the most important step is to understand that need. So we found the most successful data science projects happen, or data generic projects happen, is whenever you put an analyst next to your biggest decision maker, so they can actually watch what they're doing, watch what questions are important, and go help track down information to go behind that. So oftentimes whenever a client or someone will ask for, let's say, a churn model, you need to actually go one step behind and say, what is actually driving this? Are we wanting to optimize the marketing spend in order to retain people? Are we trying to identify a customer base that's maybe sticky so we can go out and better get more people that are just like it? So really understanding what is your goal that you want to start with, and then building out your whole model from that. So instead of chasing accuracy or really fancy machine learning results, really focusing on what is that need and then getting into the coding. So that's why Brian walked us through for the past 10 minutes or so, really what that need was, how we were digging in, and as part of our defining stage, we went out and talked to people like the Chamber of Commerce and restaurants to really dig into what that would look like more and what kinds of information would help them to make that decision. So focusing on the business need, then getting into the coding. So understanding what types of data that you need, bringing it into that explore and prepare side, which you all know that data cleansing takes a lot of time. The only time data is clean is when you're in school or doing some kind of project in grad school. So you need to cleanse this data, understand what questions do you want to start asking your data, and then the last part as integrated into that model preparation was our cost benefit analysis, which we'll get into the actual calculation more. The next phase is to understand the type of output. So this is very important to understand. Are we looking to just get like a one-time answer? We want to make a decision, should we launch a product? Do we turn off this network? Or do we need something that's more automated or an interactive app that someone can go use and make that decision? So we decided for this one is that we wanted to make an interactive app that someone could look at the pros and cons behind closing certain streets, and it would help them say, is this a good idea? Is this a bad idea? So we built that app. We'll show it to you in a second here. And then really it's just getting it into the right hands. So making sure that those people are involved to begin with. So of course for us it was a little harder to do some convincing to get this in the right hands. But for your own company or a client, if you're in the consulting space, making sure that the person who's going to use this information or the app, that they're really a part of your planning phase and they're with you from day one, so you know that your information is going to be used. So with that, I will hand it over to Yuliya, and she can walk us through more on that coding side.
Okay, thank you, Megan. Brian, can you show next slide? Yes, so let's talk about the data sets that we used. So obviously we decided early on what kind of data we need. So we were looking for a list of local businesses, including restaurants, and also we wanted to see traffic counts in those areas. So originally we wanted to use city records of licensed businesses for our analysis. But then when we looked at the data first, we realized that it was not sufficient at all. Like, for example, some restaurants, they put their business address instead of the actual location. So we ended up with what seems to be Denver restaurants, but they would be displayed all over the country. So then instead we use Google API, and that was much better to provide it with the data that we need. For example, if you look at those screenshots below, this is Larimer Square, and we knew right away that there is no way that there is only one restaurant in Larimer Square. There is way more than that. So once we start using the Google API data, then we received more realistic view of what's going on in that area. And as far as traffic data goes, that data set was pretty good, clean, and so we decided to use it. It was just a citywide traffic counts. Okay. So in really the first phase, when you start working with data, it's explore and prepare your data, right? As Meghan mentioned, there is a lot of cleansing and preparation involved. You need to refine your data set. You need to format it in the way so it can fit into your future model. And that's the work that we had to do at the beginning. So as an example, after we consume data via Google API, we wrote our code, which helped us to clean raw data and organize it in such a way that it's ready for ingestion into our model. So before I start sharing the code, I wanted to say a couple of words about the technology that we used. So it's called Databricks. Again, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar or not, so I will just give you a little intro. So it's the Databricks is a unified data analytics platform. It can be used by data engineers, data scientists, and really business analysts even to effectively work with large-scale data and collaborate in a single environment. There are several benefits about Databricks that really stand up. So at first, it's all cloud-based. You can work with AWS or Azure. So it's really minimum setup. You don't need to, spin up clusters. You need to set up your infrastructure. You pretty much open the web page, register, and you're good to go. So very easy to start, very fast. The second one is a very familiar interface. If you're a data scientist and Jupyter is your choice of the tool, so it's pretty much looks like a Jupyter notebook. So very familiar, very easy to start, and I mean, it's kind of one of the most popular interfaces to use. The next one is collaboration, and that was it was a pretty big deal for us. So Databricks is unique in a way that it allows you to mix languages in a single notebook. So for example, in our team, we had a pretty diverse skill set. Some of us know Python or R or all know SQL. So with Databricks, you can really just work in the same notebook. You don't need to kind of send your code back and forth or work on different things. You can really collaborate in just one environment. And that was a big deal for us. And the last one is it's really scalable. So our data sets were pretty small, so we didn't have any large data volumes or anything like that. But with Databricks, you can scale easily. So you can really start with maybe smaller data sets, smaller analysis, and you can grow easily. It's all based on Spark, which is, again, if you know, it's probably one of the most popular, besides Hadoop, data distribution platform, data processing platform. So Databricks is all based on Spark. Actually, the creators of Databricks are the same people that created Spark itself. So it's even faster than the Spark on-prem. So they say, I don't know, anything from like 10 times to 100 times faster than Hadoop. So again, you can just scale your data sets really quickly. Just add more clusters, obviously pay a little bit more money, but you can just do it very quickly. So that's Databricks. I'm probably gonna switch to, Brian, I will take over. I'm gonna switch to the actual notebook. Okay.
Okay, you should be able to share, Yuliya.
Yeah. Let me see. Okay, here we go. Let me know if when you guys start seeing, do you see GitHub page? No, I don't see what I show.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, perfect. So actually, if you guys interested later, our code is in the GitHub. That was part of the submission. So we can share this link, but pretty much we shared all our data sets and the actual notebooks. So let's kind of go quickly through this, and feel free to stop me if you want me to maybe talk a little bit more about particular pieces, because it's pretty large notebook. So I'll just try to go high level through all major elements. Okay, so at first, obviously, we need to install and import some libraries because we use both Python and R. So we had to import all the libraries. Like for example, for Python, pandas, numpys, some of the popular ones. We also import volume, which allows to build pretty cool maps. So this is the libraries that we use, and the same with for the R. So the first part obviously is bringing in our data sets. As I said, we have the local businesses data sets, and we also had traffic data sets. So, and the way it works with Databricks, I will quickly actually switch to the Databricks interface. So the way that works, again, it's very simple. When you start, you just spin up your cluster, which is your computing power, and you can start with very small clusters. Then what you can do, you can load your data directly into Databricks. They have like their own file system. It's called DBFS. So you can add your data, like for this exercise, we just did CSV files, and they would be stored like here in file store tables, and then you can just literally just drag and drop of files. Or in more like production environment, what would you do? You usually would connect to like a AWS S3 bucket, or you would connect to Azure Blob, and you can consume data from there. So really just a couple options how you can access data. So we put our files in DBFS, and they were ready to go. So you will see, so here we did a couple of cleansing exercises. We renamed some columns, we dropped columns that we don't need, did some little bit of transformation. So again, pretty basic but necessary step of cleansing and preparing our data. So it's in the good format. So for example, at the end, we would come up with this table, which would say, okay, we have these zones. And actually for this exercise, we just, this was proof of concept. So we just picked up 3 areas, Larimer, Pearl, and Tennyson, in all the restaurants and other businesses in that area. And then latitude and longitude, so we can map it, right? So we come up with this nice and clean data set at the end. The same work was done for the traffic. So for example, couple of things that we noticed once we started looking at data, like some of the columns, like AM traffic and PM traffic, they had a lot of nulls. So we came up with our own formula of daily traffic. So we don't have missing values. So we kind of prepare all that table, and again we have location, so we can map it together with the restaurants. Okay. So one thing is interesting when you're working in Databricks, if you want to really mix the languages. Like if you put the data in the Python data frame, you can really only read it with Python. But if you want to be able to consume the same data with R, what you can do, you can convert them into the Spark data frames. That's, again, very unique to Databricks. And then you can reuse it. You can write R on top of that, or you can write SQL or Python. So that was our kind of way of sharing and applying different languages within the same notebook. Okay. So again, a little bit more of preparation work. We split some data sets, and finally we were able to create the map. And for this map, volume maps are actually a pretty cool library. I like it a lot. We were able to put together on the same map restaurants, all other businesses, traffic. So kind of presented in one way. And I will just show you the screenshot quickly. Can you see the picture? Okay. Yeah,
Yes.
you can, yeah, okay, sorry. So for example, this is the final part of the final dashboard that we built. So this is the map, right? So we say, okay, we're looking at, what is it? This is Tennyson or Pearl, this is Pearl, right? And you can kind of say, this is the area we want to look at. That's the area we think makes sense to close. This is all the restaurants and other businesses. So restaurants in blue, and then other businesses like, I don't know, maybe bookstores or clothes stores. And then the traffic that we identified. So that's kind of nice to see just on everything on one map. Okay. And after this, we were really ready to start with the actual analysis. This was all prep work to be able to consume data sets in the way that we needed. So for our cost-benefit analysis, what we did, we wanted to create like a common baseline so we can compare things. For example, we have all these restaurants, and we would say, we were making an assumption that if we expand into the streets, we will be able to keep restaurant open that many hours, right? Here is the different price level, different price depending on the price level of the restaurant, and really putting dollar amounts to every single thing that we think matters for this analysis. So then we can just compare, right? It's dollar to dollar, apple to apples. So we can just do comparison analysis, and we can see which areas are better to close and which ones are maybe not so much. So for example, for our benefits, obviously restaurants will benefit, right? The more customers, the more paying customers come in, the more money they make. Also, another benefit will be for workers. If people continue working, obviously they make salary, they make tips, so that's a benefit. But at the same time, we think that there will be some, some costs, right, or some losses. For example, city probably will have to spend money on street closure, right? They probably need to bring police. Also, because the streets will be closed, there probably will be a little bit more traffic around, and people will have to drive around to find parking spot. So we actually put the dollar amount to time that people waste just sitting in their car. So again, that was our assumption. So, and once we put all those dollar amounts to every single benefit and cost, then we were able to say, okay, so what's our net benefit and cost? Does it make sense to close this area or not? And again, this is like, if we go back to this picture, you can kind of see, we, for example, for Pearl, we would say our total benefit is like around 46,000 per day. And then, this is our cost. So we will still end up with a net benefit. And we were able to compare the areas, and actually we found out that Pearl was much more beneficial to close than something like Larimer. And again, that was kind of the final view of our analysis. When you can see and make decision at a glance, does it make sense to close the street or not, and which areas are more profitable. Okay. Any questions so far? So I wanted to share a couple of other things about the notebook that we wrote and about Databricks. So if Databricks really allow you to work with, you can work with structured data, but it's really designed to work with unstructured data lakes. And data lakes, there are some issues with data lakes, like sometimes data can be not reliable. It's immutable in a way that, once you loaded the data, you cannot really change it. You cannot really, kind of see the history of changes. So what the Databricks have, and this is actually open source as well, they have this concept of Delta Lake. And Delta Lake allow this like a time travel mechanism. So it's like a storage layer on top of data lakes. And it's all metadata based, but it allows you to see the history. Like it allows you to say, for example, a month ago, that's how my data look like. And this is how it looks right now. It seems very simple, right? From like traditional BI and SQL databases, this is so easy to see, right? We have those type 2 dimensions all the time, but it's not an easy task or pretty much impossible task with just traditional data lakes. And Databricks and Delta, they kind of solve this issue by providing this additional storage layer. So it's pretty cool. So we kind of applied these Delta tables to keep the history of our analysis. Like for example, we wanted to play around with some variables and say, hey, if you put, we put this kind of benefit, right? This kind of dollar amount, how our final analysis will look like. And what if we change it? Can we rerun it, right? Kind of like point in time analysis. So we use Delta Lakes to kind of keep those history of our variables, and so we can switch and see which makes more sense. Okay, so a little bit of Delta. Again, you can see, so most code was written with Python, but then you can put these magic commands, for example, SQL, and you can just write SQL. Like, for example, right, I don't know, maybe you don't know how exactly to do it in Python, or maybe, another person joins, so you can just literally just put SQL and work with the same data. And the same way, I think somewhere here, we also use some R, right? So again, Steve was writing some R, and we were able just to blend in his code seamlessly inside the Databricks. So again, more R code. So you literally can just write one cell SQL, one cell R, and go back to Python in the same environment. Okay, so more analysis, more conversions, but really the final result of all this, we build this interactive dashboard, and you can actually do it inside the Databricks. We didn't even use any other tools. It's native capabilities, but pretty much this is what this look like. And I actually will give it over to Steve, and he can really talk a little bit more about our findings and kind of final analysis.
All right. Brian, do you want to share again? Thank you, Yuliya, for that.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Sure, no problem. I will share.
We'll start on 17.
There you go.
I want to start on 17, Brian.
Did I? Oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong. This
Yeah.
one?
So
Okay.
basically, as everyone has touched on a little bit earlier, again, for those that are not familiar, or for those that are familiar with the area, when we compared 3 zones, if you will. One was Tennyson, one was Laramie, and we found that Pearl Street, for the exercise that we did, was actually the winner. Again, so if you think about what does this all mean? So beyond the code, what are the insights that you can draw? How can you actually put this into practice? How can you actually use this within your, in this case, city, if you will? And so we found that amongst all the different businesses that we compared, clothing stores, bookstores, obviously restaurants benefited more than other type of businesses, even though clothing stores, bookstores, for example, they could also extend into the street and put their merchandises out there, benefits because of the amount that they get patronized and the revenue that they generated, the margin, if you will. They were the biggest beneficiary. Specifically, we found that restaurants that are in that 3rd price level, and so we use Yelp to kind of figure out the levels. Those that are in that 3rd price level, those are the ones that have plates up to $60 per dinner plates. Those benefited more than some of the other ones. So like, your McDonald's or your Chick-fil-A, or some of the more high-end restaurants, their margins didn't really fit. So the sweet spot is really that was like $20, $25 to $60. And then within the restaurant business, the employees are actually the biggest beneficiaries as well. So we saw that with the street extensions, businesses are able to bring back some of their workforce, but not all of their workforce. So ultimately, those folks that are able to come back, they're able to get more tables, and obviously it turned out they're able to make more tips. They do have to work a little bit harder to look at traffic patterns and how much they have to walk. So there's a lot more here as far as analysis that you can do. You can examine those type of things as well. So then with the cost benefit analysis, we've been talking about the benefits. Yuliya touched on this a little bit, but if you think about the costs, obviously the city government in this case would incur most of the cost. Again, think about what it takes for security to secure those streets, the salaries that you have to pay for the officers, whether on duty or off duty. There were a significant amount of data in the areas that we analyzed. And so there's some revenue loss to the city as well. Yuliya mentioned some of the things about driving around, finding parking spot, but specifically for the city, in those areas there are parking meters that now they can't utilize, they can't get revenue from those. There are traffic tickets, there are street lights, just speeding zones where now, because those streets are closed, the cities can generate revenue from that as well. So there's some revenue lost for the city as well. So that sort of was a nutshell of what we found in our analysis. Go ahead to the next slide, Brian.
Mm-hmm. There we go.
So what you see here, when we presented this about a month ago, we wanted to focus more on, again, this was done for social good. So we wanted to focus more on not just how you can utilize this within the city, but how you can now translate this into your individual business. The same concept, now you can use it within your organization. Most of you are familiar with this. This is your typical process and analytics. So again, you start with your input and your assumptions. You do the work, you measure the data, and then you refine your estimate. And that's the cycle starts all over again. It's important though to note that you obviously have to hypothesize like we did initially. We thought that restaurant would benefit, so our hypothesis turned out to be correct. But then as you build your model and as you conduct analysis, you have to make sure that as you analyze those results, you do that refinement. That's a key step that a lot of organizations fail to miss. Yuliya touched on the last piece you was talking about, where within Databricks, we made some modification. Okay, so what if we did this versus what if we did that? How does that change our output? So that was that's essentially what we're trying to highlight in this section. Next, Brian. And so, as I mentioned, we thought, as you can see, that you can see the linearity between employment and seating. And so we thought with increased seating, obviously, there's going to be more revenue. There's going to be employment increase as well. There are other benefits, again, for those that are coming back to work, beyond just being able to make more tips. Think about health benefits, things like that. That goes along with that. And so, as I mentioned earlier, we saw the restaurant benefited earlier, but then one of the things that we challenged ourselves was to think about, okay, how can we take this a step further? How can we improve on the work that we did, or even if we, handed this off to a city, municipality, what are some of the things that we would recommend that they do to take this to this next level? The first thing that obviously jumps to mind is looking at more zones as opposed to just those high-end areas that we looked at. And then I always like to think about how do you score the zones and then the businesses and then merge those together. So even though we thought Pearl Street is better for closure, specifically to restaurants, perhaps Tennyson may be better for bookstores. Maybe Larimer may be better for clothing stores or other types of retail business. So those are another things that we can do is to look at the zones and then we compare those scores together. Also, we can use real-time data. Obviously, things change. The data that we have could be stale. A particular area or zone may be more active or over time with different developments or construction or whatever the case might be. So having real-time data where you can make informed, quicker decisions will be something that we will also recommend as an addition to this. And then also, how do you account for noise and biases within the data that you have? Again, I mentioned we use Yelp. That's obviously very subjective with the price level. And so, you have to make sure that you account for those noise and biases within your data. And then lastly for us, taking this beyond major streets, in our case, Denver, I wanted to take this to, the entire state of Colorado. So thinking about your Auroras of the world, Colorado Springs, different major hubs within the state. The key is to make sure that they have accurate data. I know Brian and Yuliya mentioned on some of the challenges that we face with the data that we obtain from Google, and then also some of the from the city as well. So having proper data is important to be able to take this beyond a major city. So we did all of this for social good. And again, as I mentioned, there are obviously some use cases where this could be applicable to you within your organization. Again, it's the same concept, just different data, different application. So hopefully this can prompt some thoughts about the role that analytics can play within your organization. Again, for most of you, it's nothing new, but I just want to throw that out there. And so I'm going to go through a few use cases, and we're going to talk about how analytics can help you if you have some of those challenges. So the first is targeting. This is obviously a common issue that we see with sales and marketing teams, where they're not aligned with customers. They're not going after the right customers. Obviously, that leads to reduced sales and profit. Analytics is a tool that can help you solve some of those challenges, where you can identify the right customers. You can see what customers fit with your business and operating model, and then even identify customers, whether by demographic or whatever the case might be, that are being neglected by competition. Those customers that are feeling left out, it's a great opportunity where you can go after those guys. So organization in turn can be more efficient with their sales and be more effective with their marketing campaigns. Again, thinking about that cycle, right? So, this is a process that needs to be iterative. So you start it, you develop those hypotheses, you look at your data. Again, if it's click-throughs in marketing, whether it's looking at the ROIs that you're getting on your marketing campaigns, looking at customer behaviors, are they buying more? Is what we expect actually correct? Refine those measures and then go back again and fix those. Another one that was near and dear to our heart is business valuation. If you think about small businesses or entrepreneur, think about the Snowflake IPO that just happened today. This is a challenge where every leader has a convincing reason why their business should be valued higher or even lower than what it should be. Data and analytics is obviously a tool that can help you examine some of those driving factors, and then you can reduce some of those wild assumptions and speculations that you have about your business. So what we can look at is, for example, looking at like from a revenue standpoint, look at cost and margins, and then also examine, okay, what is similar competition? How are they valued? Again, in the case of Snowflake today, what are some of the Redshift or some of the other competitive tool? How they value? What is the ceiling? What should the floor be? Again, looking at how wide those assumptions are, or how accurate they are, can help us with subsequent business valuations, whether we're valuing the entire business or a subset of the business. And lastly, I'm very passionate about this because it's an area that a lot of people aren't necessarily into right now. This is a prime case for people analytics. So if you think about recruiting and retention, I have some personal friends in HR. HR teams that are struggling to find the right candidates, the best candidates. So who's going to fit our company culture? Who should we extend an offer to? And who's actually going to accept those offers? What is the right offer that we need to offer to that person for them to accept? So analytics in this case obviously will help us identify internally those the characteristics of those high performing teams. So individuals that work well within organizations, the type of folks that we need to go after, and then we can identify, okay, these are the type of folks that we need to go after, whether it's based on experience, education level, different attributes, different variables that we can identify and target the right candidates. We can also look at the role that analytics play in collaboration. So those high performing individuals, what does collaboration look like for them? Are these folks that are high in network and density? What is that network and density effect to those high performers? And then look at things like their compensation and their benefits. Is it something that they're happy with? You can also even conduct internal survey to understand your employee experience as well. The one thing I do want to say in closing about this is to be careful when you're looking at analytics when it comes to things like HR and like recruiting. This should really be a complement to the human decision. This is not meant to replace their professional experience. Unlike the work that we did, where it was really straightforward, it was more logical, was more quantitative. Here, there's a lot of things that may be difficult to measure when you're thinking about people. Obviously, it's hard to do that when you're looking at a resume, when you're feeding your resume through a AI machine. So you have to make sure that analytics in this case is truly a complement to the human decision and the human experience that you have. So that's all we have today, guys. Again, remember, we are taking it to the streets. So if you come across anything along those lines, feel free to reach out to us. If you have any questions in particular to what we did, how we can help you, how RevGen can help you, reach out to any one of us. And now we'll stop and open it up for some questions. Thank you.
Don't everyone talk at once.
Guess, I'd love to know if anyone else has used Databricks in the past. I mean, it works quite well with SQL. It's one of the languages it supports. Like if you're trying to combine that with Python or R or anything like that.
I haven't used it. We had, I think Ginger Grant a couple of months ago. She gave a session on that. So
Yes.
yeah, I haven't used it myself.
I think this was the first time for some of us, for me really, this was the first time I'd used it to any extent. And yeah, I mean, it's got huge potential, especially if you're trying to, combine that SQL, the Python, and then, analyze massive amounts of data. It's very powerful in that regard.
Yeah, I have some challenges with Databricks. The team are laughing. They know how I feel about Databricks, but no, I think it's a great tool. One of the things I wanted to mention when Yuliya was doing her part was, and Yuliya, you're gonna have to remind me the visual tool that they've acquired or sort of merged with now, that makes visualization, takes it to a whole nother level out of Databricks. So using Databricks, you have its native viz in there, but it's not very robust. So thinking about tools like Tableau, Power BI, for example, but they've acquired another tool, and it's skipping my mind now, but that lets you do more of that robust visualization with the data that you have. Yuliya, do you remember what that was called?
I'm sitting here trying to remember the name. I don't remember, but it did sound pretty cool.
Yeah, it was pretty
It was
nice.
pretty impressive, yeah. At first I was like, oh, it's like any other visualization tool, but then yeah, it definitely does a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Especially for like data science type of analysis.
Correct.
Yeah.
I had a question, now that my microphone is working. You were talking about how sometimes it's difficult to get the right type of data. How do you know what type of data points, or I guess you could also say the accuracy of the data from the clients would best serve the type of report that you're doing? And if they're bluffing it, how are you able to kind of catch it with other data?
One of the things we saw with this particular data set was just a quick visualization, like a down and dirty visualization of the data, showed us pretty quickly that it was lacking. Now, I mean, that won't work with every organization, but I think it's a good first step when you're looking at data to just throw in a quick plot. If you're seeing a lot of outliers, if you're seeing a lot of issues that present themselves visually, then to certainly investigate further.
That's what I will say. That's one difficulty with using external data. So I know internal data is most companies, it's messy enough and it's hard enough to go grab like a complete data set for what you're looking for. So a lot of those steps need to happen with your own data internally of, is this accurate? Is this complete? Has this been updated? Understanding the metadata behind it, but then even more so with external data. And the good thing is you can find some feedback. So if you were to Google, like, where do I find the best, most comprehensive restaurant? There are people out there talking about where to find it, because the good thing is everyone else in the data world wants to use that data as well. So I'd say internally doing a lot of those checks, talking with the data team of an example, my client, we just found out that one team has been using a data source that hasn't been updated in about 2 years. So just things like that. You always need to check that the data is up to date and complete, but more so with that external, because you have no idea where it's coming from.
Yeah, and I'll say internally as well, and I've heard Brian talk about this a few times. I think it's always important for you to know what you're trying to measure, what you're trying to analyze, and then having an understanding of those variables. And then with that, most times when you go into this project, you have an idea of, again, I talk about hypothesis, you have an idea of what you're looking for, what your results should be, right?
Yeah.
So if it's like totally off base and, it's way out of left field, telltale sign is to obviously start there and make sure that, you have good data, that, you have data integrity. Again, not a plug for RevGen, but it is a plug for RevGen. But most of the time we always sell, data governance as part of the work that we do. And I think that's critical that for most of the organizations that want to go to this higher level and really use analytics the way it should be used. I've never seen it done in a place where they don't value or they've not implemented some data governance. And I'm not just talking about, at the simple level, but at least have a formal data governance where you have ownership and processes and things like that in place.
Good question.
Any other questions?
And I think, I'm not sure how is best to share information, but we can share out that GitHub link with more code if anyone's interested.
Well, now I guess we got to get Gabe to get us our dinner.
So do you guys have a GitHub area that you guys like to share this kind of code or samples of your code with?
Yeah, we have the whole notebook and those data files that we used. We have them all in GitHub. So I can either share via email or can just put it in the chat here if somebody wants to grab it. Either way.
Yeah, that might be good. If you can, it's just a link, right, Yuliya?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. You could just put in the chat. Then those who are interested can save it.
All right. Anything else? Otherwise, we're going to go to Brian. Are you ready to do some giveaway?
The fun part.
Yeah, absolutely. We can do that. So looking through the list of people we have here. Is Dan Q a an alias for someone?
Probably.
Okay. Is Dan Q online? If you are, you can just go ahead and put in the chat that you're here. I know you're a real person. Maybe, maybe not.
Better claim your prize.
No, it's not to claim your prize. It's to see if that person is going to be in the drawing.
I'm here. Just don't know, can't find the chat.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. All right, then I have a list of, looks like 13 people to try this on. I'm going to go ahead and try the random generator, and my number is 4. I alphabetized the numbers 1, 2, 3. That'll be Eric Mead would be the winner for this month's contest. So yay, Eric Mead. So if you can do me a favor, Eric, you can reach out to me here and just now posted up my email for everyone to see. But yeah, Eric, if you can just go ahead and reach out to me, and I'll get back in touch with you with the information to register a.
What was it for again? Was it for JetBrains?
Yes, it's actually JetBrains license for almost anything that they have. It's kind of a generic license. You go up there, you enter in the information, and they'll let you pick out what software you want.
Okay, well, it's pretty cool that I won. Thank you for that. However, I already have a subscription to their entire package of products.
Well,
so I feel it might be a little bit wasted
pick
on
out the
me.
next person then, or do we just do another drawing?
Yeah, maybe just do another drawing.
All right, we'll do that. And this time I'm getting back the Usba Gibbs. And let's see here. Usba, yep. Are you there?
I'm here. And
excellent. I'm sure I mispronounced your name. It's probably Usba.
Yeah, it's Usba.
Yeah, just go ahead and reach out to me at the email. Do you have my email from the chat?
I will grab it.
Excellent. And then I will just go ahead and send it back, a response to you with the certificate.
Great. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
All right. Does anybody else have any other business? I probably shouldn't have recorded all that. Let me go stop recording.